We've been talking about the Nimbus variant of COVID, but I guess there's another one. There's some cases in San Francisco. They found a tripling, I think, of wastewater indicators or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
for the new variant. And I think it's Stratus. I had it written over here. It's called the Stratus variant. Have you heard of that? Is that the one you were talking
I
about?
haven't. I haven't. That may be the one that was referenced. But again, we every morning, John Niles, one of the things he does is he checks the Affinity website for updates and all. So he's always up to date on everything. And we track the wastewater reporting systems as well as actual case reports. So we really follow this. We depend a lot on our Affinity. It's a very good reporting system. And I know that, and again, I met them through bio in the early part of 2020 because people were looking, everybody was looking to obtain information both from an epidemiologic basis as well as a competitive basis. Who's doing what? Who's working on what? How many developments are underway? So we were all seeking such information, and that was where they cut their teeth and established their being was specifically related to the COVID-19, the pandemic, but they've branched much more broadly now. And we see them. They have people in the U.S., but we see them and talk to them. They're in London. Hopefully, I'll see them next month when I'm over there. So.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, you get to meet the team. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic what they're doing with the wastewater. Because I mean, a lot of times people don't want to get tested. They just, a lot of reports aren't made. So this is a great way to do it independent of anyone's desire to kind of go to the doctor or not, right?
Interesting story is in April, we were at the World Vaccine Congress, which is held in Washington, D.C. every year in the April time period. And our Affinity always has a booth there. I was chatting, they know that, we're good clients, long-term clients, et cetera. And we were talking to them, and that was when it had been reported about evidence from wastewater in North Carolina.
Hmm.
And they hadn't even picked that up, and we informed them of that. And so
Hmm.
it was interesting. We were laughing. We said, we depend so much on you guys, but we're the ones that informed them because it was reported, within the US, not through a data source, but it was picked
I
up
see.
through the monitoring system. And we talked to them about that. And I mentioned that to them. They ended up issuing, they didn't give credit to the source, but they ended up issuing that on like a daily update, though, that it had been reported.
I thought I'd start out our conversation today with all the dramatic changes that have gone on with a lot of the government agencies, such as a lot of the changes actually have been very favorable to GeoVax. It sounds like it might the broader mandates that have been put out there sound like they might be negative for vaccines, but they're actually rather positive for you. And I thought we'd talk about that. And some of those examples include the desire for a multi-antigen vaccine, moving away from mRNA vaccines, and then also the move towards domestic production
Okay.
of vaccines. So I thought this would be a great way for you to explain how GeoVax is aligned with these new directives out there.
Okay. So John, good morning. It's great to be here. And I would just say there have been so many announcements since the beginning of the year in the new administration that are related to the vaccine industry. By and large, most individuals and most companies appear to be interpreting them as sort of negative potentiality relative to their businesses and relative to the industry at large. We at GeoVax have taken a different approach because we're looking at them in a different manner because many of them are well aligned with elements of what we're building as the foundation of GeoVax and elements of our business, our technologies, and our plans. And I'll use as an example, in early April, Secretary Kennedy did his first network interview. It was on CBS News. And during that interview, he expressed his preference for multi-antigen infectious disease vaccines versus single antigen vaccines. Now, what that means is a single antigen vaccine is a vaccine that only addresses one antigen or one element protein, if you want to call it that, of a virus. And that's how the first generation COVID-19 vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, and Novavax protein adjuvant technologies are constructed. they are limited in only being able to address one element of a virus at a time. And that has some potential shortcomings, as we've seen, and limitations in that it will give you a narrower response and less durable response typically than you would see with what is referred to as a multi-antigen, which is actually incorporating more than one element of the virus. So it could be incorporating elements of the virus that induce a strong antibody response, but it could also be including elements of the virus, other proteins or antigens that induce very strong T cells. That combination of antibody and cellular or T cell immunity drives a greater durability, so lasting power, also breadth of protection, meaning that as new variants arise, that the vaccine will continue to
Mm,
provide protective immunity.
exactly. Yeah.
GeoVax, in fact, our foundation is built on a multi-antigen platform, which is why in the clinic we're seeing greater protection across the variants than we see with the first generation or the current authorized vaccines, specifically mRNA. And our durability is currently demonstrating 8 to 12 months versus 3 to 6 months that we're seeing from mRNA vaccines. So we align very well in that regard when one looks at sort of the diversity of platforms, multi-antigen versus single antigen. Let me just add, however, that single antigen vaccines do play a very important role. If you're dealing with a virus, for instance, something such as measles, something such as polio, that does not continuously evolve, then a single antigen vaccine could be very beneficial. And that's why we're able to give someone a vaccine, for instance, for measles, and they usually don't need one for the rest of their life, or for polio. But if you're dealing with a pathogen such as SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, HIV, and other types of infectious threats where
Rapidly mutating viruses.
absolutely. A
Yeah.
continuously evolving virus, mpox is another perfect example, then you need to consider approaching it in a manner that gives you a greater breadth and longer lasting. And that's where the multi-antigen, which is the basis of the GeoVax technology, comes in so importantly. So it's not that it's always the best, but there are certain situations with mpox, with COVID-19, et cetera, where the multi-antigen aligns not only very well with GeoVax, but gives us perhaps a preferred position from a development standpoint.
And the other way that GeoVax strongly aligns with some of the changes that are going on is the desire to have domestic production of vaccines. And I think the mpox slash smallpox vaccine is one of the areas where GeoVax is trying to bring that manufacturing back to the U.S. Why don't you explain how it is now and how you would be able to increase the number of suppliers for that and make it in the United States?
So right now, there is a single source supplier worldwide for the vaccine that is approved by both the FDA and WHO. It's utilized to prevent not only mpox, but also smallpox. In fact, it was developed specifically against smallpox. But smallpox, mpox, there's horsepox, believe it or not, camelpox. There's a whole family of pox viruses.
Mhm.
And there is a vaccine called modified vaccinia ankara, known as MVA, and that was the vaccine that was originally developed specifically to eradicate the world of smallpox. It works very nicely among pregnant women, children, and also people with weaker or compromised immune systems. So it's exquisitely safe, and it's what allowed the world to eradicate the world of smallpox. But it also is the preferred product because it can be used in all populations against mpox. So that's very important. Right now, that vaccine is provided by a single supplier worldwide, and that supplier manufactures in Denmark. So it's a non-U.S. source product, but it is the product that the entire world is upon which the entire world is dependent. So there are those shortcomings, not domestic manufacturing. We're reliant on a foreign entity. And in fact, the construction and building of that company's plant, the continuous funding of and purchase of the vaccine are all funded by the U.S. taxpayer. So we think that there are a number of reasons why we have seen within Congress, legislators, leaders in the administration, demanding, quite frankly, that we need to move to more domestic manufacturing, be in control of our own manufacturing, and be self-sufficient from that standpoint. GeoVax is transitioning to a new method of manufacturing with MVA that will produce tenfold the amount of product
Mm.
per sort of yield that you get out of it, and actually, believe it or not, has a five-fold decrease in cost. So there's a
Mm.
lot of attributes there. It will also be based in the United States. And from that standpoint, that will enable the U.S. to be totally self-sufficient, bring additional supply source on a global basis. Right now, there's a single source worldwide. That's a monopoly. That's not necessarily that good for everybody. Certain countries cannot even source product today. So we're going to be bringing forward domestic manufacturing and also adding to the supply that is out there, which today, well, the supply is far short of what the demand is just in today's environment. So that's another area that we align very well. We are in direct contact right now with legislators, with people within the administration. We're discussing with various stakeholders who are not within the U.S. but are stakeholders in this issue that are looking to support companies such as GeoVac to expand so that there will be domestic and more higher yield efficient manufacturing of the MVA vaccine. So we're quite very much involved in this right now, looking forward that hopefully within the next 3 years we'll be generating revenues with this vaccine and transitioning into US based manufacturing.
And David, it sounds like you'll be very competitive with that, with, you said a 10 times increase in productivity and a five-fold reduction in cost. I mean, it sounds like that it'll be very, very competitive with the product made in Denmark. Is that what you expect?
We think we'll actually have an advantage from a cost of manufacturing standpoint to the manufacturing that currently is done in Denmark. We also think, and there's almost like a compounding effect, because when we look at the yield that comes out of a certain size production, let's say tank or environment and all, we're seeing an estimated not only tenfold increase, but also the ability to manufacture different batches in a faster manner. So that's where that sort of compounding effect comes in. Not only on an individual basis is more coming out of it, but if you're able to do more manufacturing runs within a specified time period, you're going to then even further add to the supply. Plus, the fact that we're reducing the cost of the overall manufacturing means not only is it an advantage for us competitively, but what it allows us to do is to partner with countries throughout Africa, through the Africa
Mm.
CDC and all. We're in discussions with them right now because this technology will allow Africa to become self-sufficient. Today, they are depending on having to source through this single supplier, and they seem to always be at the end of at the back of the line and never able to
Mm.
obtain what their need is. So we're in active discussions right now with people throughout Africa. We'll be doing our clinical trials within Africa for our GeoMVA, our MVA vaccine product. And we hope to, and we're in discussions to be able to partner on a long-term basis so that they become fully self-sufficient. And we do what is known as a transition environment, that we initially work in conjunction with them, putting forward the technology within Africa, but over time, they become owners of their own technology, and we simply will receive ongoing benefits, royalties, if you want to think about it, of that. But that will allow them to fully control from the drug development all the way through the
Mm.
fill finish, which is what
And they'll
every
have a domestic source as well. So that would
yeah,
be,
exactly.
yeah. So, there are a bunch of other initiatives that have been, put forth by the federal government. One of those is Equipapharma. That's something new, and all of our viewers might not be familiar with that. Can you explain what Equipapharma is and how GeoVax is involved with that?
Sure. GeoVax is involved with the Equipment Pharma, and that's an acronym, but it really represents a program that is being driven by HHS through ASPR, their Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, and also with DARPA, which is the Defense Agency Research Products of Association or Agency, I should say. I'm sorry, it's Advanced Research Products Agency. And so those two are working together with industry to try and bring forward. The goal is to bring forward more agile, faster to implementation technologies for manufacturing and doing that within the U.S. And obviously that aligns, Equipday Pharma aligns extremely well with what we are pursuing at GeoVax.
Exactly.
We have already done the outreach and we're in discussions about being a more active participant in Equipday Pharma as we speak.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it sounds like it's aligned with the MVA initiatives that you're working on with the Mpox and smallpox. There have been a lot of shocks over the last 7 months or so in an industry that's already been facing a lot of challenges. We had the peak back in, I guess, 2021, and when funding was very available, and things have turned around. So there've been layoffs, grant cancellations, leadership changes, the prospect of tariffs, drug pricing reforms, a whole bunch of changes to the environment, which can be challenges to management companies or management teams at companies. How have all the changes over the last several months impacted your ability and to manage GeoVax? And then also, how has it just changed what you're doing?
Well, I would say there is, I would define it a rising level of optimism that I'm feeling and sensing through discussions with people throughout the industry, that the whole capital development environment is likely to improve as we go forward for the remainder of this year into next year. But there's not certainty. So there's still big question marks from all of us, especially companies that are pre-revenue, clinical stage development, or even preclinical stage development, basically development stage biotech companies who are so dependent on continuously building and strengthening their balance sheets to be able to advance their programs forward in a timely manner. That is critically important to all different stakeholders, not just shareholders, but patients, the medical community, public health, obviously from a competitive standpoint. But we're not there yet. I do share that sense. Some of us were talking about it in various meetings that relate to bio just in the last 2 weeks. So we sense that, but we're really not there yet. So it has been a challenge. Some of the changes we have dealt with, just this year alone with the new administration, are shifts in priorities. Many of us, GeoVax included, were doged. We were part of Project Next Gen. That entire program has essentially been doged now, so a new direction for that. At the same time, other opportunities arise because we have then had outreach and received outreach that as recent as yesterday, we were having follow-up discussions and we were given qualification to go to the next stage in discussions regarding significant amounts of funding with other parts of the federal government. So one side you get doged on, the other side opportunity opens up.
Yeah.
I would urge everyone, it's better to first of all be realistic about your business and work with your team, your colleagues, and all, and how you're running it and preparing it. Make sure you continuously look at the allocation of your resources and ensure that they match your priorities. At the same time, I would urge people to maintain more a sense of optimism and sort of half full, but certainly be realistic in terms of your fiduciary responsibilities and how you allocate and utilize your resources. But I do think that generally when one door closes, at least another door may open. Sometimes you have to help push that door open. But we're finding out that although we have had some disappointments where certain programs, Project Next Gen being a perfect example where that door was closed. It was not unique to GeoVax. We were not singled out. In fact, we had been signed off on to go into the manufacturing to start dosing patients yet this year on our major phase 2B trial. But at that same time, we have then stayed in contact. Other outreach has occurred. So I think there are the opportunities there. And also from a non-dilutive funding type standpoint, we are focused on not just U.S. sources, not just the U.S. federal government, but sources such as coming out of UNICEF, Gavi, out of CEPI. All of those we're involved with. We'll be heading over in about a month now. We'll be heading over for a series of meetings during this time period, the fall every year that we have in Europe. It will include the World Vaccine Congress Europe. It'll include the fall meeting of Bio Europe. It'll include individual meetings with WHO, with UNICEF, with CEPI, with Gavi, with other entities. And so there's a lot of opportunity if your capabilities match up with what others are looking for, that they're interested in supporting. They have the capital allocated for it. And if you're ready to then match up with it, then you have a much better chance, not a guarantee, but a much better chance of having that type of agreement, reaching that type of agreement, and having additional sources of funding in support of your program. So we have a core team that will be spending at least 4 weeks in Europe in a variety of meetings, some with our existing partners, others with building of relationships that we have started over a year ago, some related to GeoMVA, some related to our advanced MVA manufacturing processes, some related to our expansion plans into not only the EU, but also into some of our activities related to Africa and throughout those regions. So it's a very busy time for us as we go into that. But I would urge anyone to follow that pathway of don't let it get you down other than for an hour or so, but stay focused on it. Continue to look for the opportunities. ARPA H is providing a lot of potential opportunities that we're looking at relative to our Gedeptin type of funding. We think that could fit with that, enable us to accelerate this potentially a little bit the start of our phase 2 trial that we hope to be initiating in the second half. We're targeted right now to initiate in the second half of 2026. We think the fastest we could, or the most we could cut off on that time period would be maybe 2 to 3 months. But if we're successful in doing that, then we're sooner into the clinic with a very important phase 2 trial than we other would be. So we're continuing to focus on all of these types of avenues of opportunities.
Okay, great. Well, I guess what I'm hearing is, number one, be optimistic, be agile, pivot quickly, and go global, right? Look globally. I guess would
Absolutely.
those be the four kind of
Everybody
pillars?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I was going to say everybody's a potential colleague, and everybody may have an avenue that you can learn from that could be a potential source of capital.
Okay, sounds good. Another big topic that I always like to bring up, and sometimes as an indicator of things to come, is M&A. As you said, you're optimistic on things improving over the rest of the year. And I had a chance a couple days ago to get caught up on the M&A and the life sciences year to date. And I think we had somewhere in the mid-90s number of transactions that were announced. And I think the number of transactions was a little bit down year over year, but the dollar amount was up year over year. I think the dollar amount was in the high $80 billion range, up single digit percent from last year. What are you seeing out there in terms of M&A, and does it give you any optimism? Are there any deals that you've seen that suggest things to come?
Well, first of all, philosophically, our board of directors, of which I serve as the chairman and member of the board, we believe very strongly that our focus at this juncture of the development of GeoVax should be really focused on driving towards these, I would call catalytic milestones that are all driven by clinical development. So we're trying to drive further, greater validation, put more information out that shows the potential value from a public health standpoint, as well as from a business development of our business standpoint, et cetera. We think that will bring in partnerships because we hold rights for all of our assets on a global basis. Our plan is to develop everything for broad-based global registration, not every single country, but as you well understand, on a global basis. We think that'll make us a better partner. And we think that'll also bring in, through those relationships, capital that'll be non-dilutive, that'll be tied in with that. We also, from our own personal experience in our careers, many of us, myself included, have been part of organizations that developed. They may have been NASDAQ companies similar to GeoVax, brought forth significant value, addressed certain areas within markets, perhaps niches or certain segments of markets that they held leadership positions. Invariably, when those things come together successfully, you tend to see larger players who are always looking to maintain their and sustain their growth in the value development they have. They're always looking for those elements of that. I always urge members of the team that don't get fixated on who to whom do we sell the company, who might be looking at us, because we can't control those things. Let's focus on what we can control,
Mhm.
drive for value, and I can assure you that discussions occur. We've had discussions, I think they're premature, so but we're always willing to listen. We've had discussions recently with companies that in the vernacular of when people are out looking at automobiles, I always say people are kicking tires and blowing horns. They may not be out ready to buy today, but they want to get to know you a little bit better. And
Right.
so, very just in real time now, people reach out. There was recently the announcement, and just this week, in fact, yesterday, I believe, was an email issued by Bavarian Nordic because their board has agreed to be acquired by a private equity firm. Obviously, they are in the MVA vaccine space as we are. From that standpoint, we and they are competitors. They are a great role model. They've been exquisitely successful. They've executed extremely well. And undeniably, people look at Bavarian Nordic and they immediately knock on our door to say, are you a candidate? Well, we may not consider ourselves a candidate now, but the response would always be, well, candidate for what? What are your thoughts? What are you talking about? No, we don't think that we necessarily are at the right stage for such a strategic type of discussion. But again, we'll be at the World Vaccine Congress in that will occur in October, and we'll be at Bio Europe in November during that time period. We always have a lot of discussions, and I can say that I know from the discussions we're having in oncology, people are very interested always in something in oncology. Gedeptin seems to be grabbing a lot of attention for people, especially in its use in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors. So we have a lot of discussions there. We're realistic, so we listen and we talk and we continue to try and stay focused on what we're doing. And then with the element of our infectious disease vaccines, there again, be it our hemorrhagic fever viruses with vaccines, which we pretty much had sort of tabled for a while. We've developed them through non-human primates, but lo and behold, there are companies out there that really focus on biodefense. And when they look around and say, who has what, they see this one company that has the ability to do a potential single vaccine that would incorporate Ebola Zaire, Ebola Sudan, and Marburg all into one vaccine through a multi-antigen approach, which would be different than doing three vaccines trying to combine them into a
Right.
combination approach. And the multi-antigen would certainly be preferred for numerous reasons. So we have those discussions. Again, I don't, this is something I intentionally do not allow myself to become distracted on and try to keep the team guided because we should be
Right.
focused on the milestones we have in front of us.
Just put your heads down, do the hard work, and it'll come when it comes.
It'll come
You
when it
mentioned
comes.
you mentioned Gedeptin, and that was the next topic I wanted to go into because Keytruda was recently approved in curative perioperative context for head and neck cancer, and I wanted to know how that informs your decision to choose a combination of Gedeptin and a checkpoint inhibitor with that approval out there for Keytruda. So how do you see that trial going ahead, the next trial for Gedeptin going forward, and how does that approval inform your decision to find a partner for that?
It's an excellent set of questions, an excellent topic, and a timely one because based upon this recent approval for Gedeptin, we shifted and we issued a press release to that effect that in late July that we had shifted our plans for our upcoming phase two away from the first recurrent head and neck cancer to first line. So
Mm-hmm.
first diagnosis head and neck cancer and a perioperative strategy because we believe, based on what we've seen from our preclinical work of utilizing Gedeptin in conjunction with an immune checkpoint inhibitor, specifically Keytruda, that we have the opportunity to improve upon the results that were the basis for the recent approval and the sort of the keynote, I think it's 689 trial, whatever the one was
Okay.
that they addressed within that time frame. So we have changed modified our approach for the protocol. That study, the product is being manufactured now. We're targeted to start that phase 2 trial in the second half, hopefully third quarter of 2026. We're quite excited about it. We've already hired we've hired the CRO relationship
Okay.
with that. We're refining the protocol. There's certain regulatory filings we have to do. This study will be conducted both in the US and the EU. So it is a major priority because, as we've indicated previously, Gedeptin is a core technology that is agnostic to the solid tumor one may be addressing. As long as that is needle accessible, we can utilize the technology, and we see a future for Gedeptin that really is the basis for an entire franchise, if not an entire standalone company. So we have a lot of interesting ongoing discussions related to Gedeptin and its long-term contribution to therapy related to solid tumor cancers.
Okay. And what else can you tell us about that phase 2 Gedeptin trial coming up? Maybe in terms of how many sites or how many patients or the time that you expect it to take to read out.
With the revision we're going through, sites aren't set, but it's going to be approximately 40 patients. We may go to
Okay.
50 patients, but we've been focused on around 40 patients. That's what the statisticians have done. When we made this shift in our strategy, we obviously tossed it back to our consultants and to our advisors and our statisticians to update the protocol. That's what's being done right now. There was a phone call on that earlier this morning of our team and various, I'll say it, contributors to this. So this is a major focus. We have we have all the elements in place, starting the manufacturing of the product. That's the biggest rate limiting step. We've had potential investors come to us very excited about the Gedeptin potential based on the recent announcements for Keytruda, et cetera, interested in what can we do to accelerate? How much money will it take to get this started 3 months from now? Well, first of all, that can't happen. We could maybe shave off 2 to 3 months, and that's the fastest you can go. Manufacturing is manufacturing. It takes 9 months generally to manufacture a new child. It's going to take us what it's going to take. We have run the numbers, we've looked at it, and at most we could shave off, I would argue, 2 months. More optimistic people would say maybe you could get it to 3 months, and that would be with sufficient funding that nothing was having to be looked at across other programs also. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. We're looking at that because there's such interest so that we're receiving related to that, and we're talking to industry players. Obviously, anyone who is currently in the market with immune checkpoint inhibitors, they seem to be more interested in getting to, again, blow the horn, kick the tires of GeoVax, get to know us, stay abreast, and we're doing that and meeting with them at every meeting we go to.
And what do you think the chances are of Merck joining you and providing Keytruda and participating in the trial as a partner? Does that seem feasible, or do you think you
Well,
might
I
have to
think
go on
it's
your own?
feasible. I don't know how probable it is. There obviously are discussions in that regard. It would make sense. We've had other players in the checkpoint inhibitor framework more aggressively reach out to us that would like to see theirs. So their argument is that if you look at the impending patent cliff with Keytruda, we'd be a better partner because we have longer term. We'll continue to
Right.
invest in it. So we know their story and we listen to them, but we also recognize the value of being associated with Keytruda. We've done previous work, our preclinical work with Keytruda, et cetera. So we think that we will continue to look at it. Our current plans are to utilize Pembro or Keytruda, as our immune checkpoint inhibitor. But those discussions, there's still room for further and continued discussions in that area.
Okay. I thought I'd turn back to Mpox and smallpox, but this time with the regulatory umbrella around it. So GeoVax had received an expedited pathway, I believe, with the European Medicines Agency to conduct a phase 3 trial. Tell us about how that's all put together and what that means for potential approval in Europe of your vaccine.
Yeah, it's a very, very exciting strategy we put in place. We started this a little over 2 years ago, believe it or not. And we did it in stealth mode because everybody would assume we were focused on FDA. We wanted to get it to a point to where we had it uh, definitively laid out, with this recent announcement that we made. That's why we made it. That was the middle of June. And the reason why we took that path is there's a very strong alignment with WHO and the EMA, or European Medicines Agency. Also, there remains existing exclusivity in the US for Bavarian Nordic's MVA-BN, that's the generic name of it, in the US, because there's exclusivity filing a BLA. That does not exist, that is expired in Europe, so you wouldn't have that hurdle to deal with and to address. And also, we recognize that through WHO potential pre-qualification, that could also open access to being able to sell a product and distribute product and basically bring revenues into the company for, start that process
Right.
faster by working throughout with various African nations, Africa CDC and others. So there were a number of issues that came together, including discussions, with the likes of be it Gavi and UNICEF, et cetera. And so within that, we put together our proposals and have been negotiating it. In the latter part of May, we received what's known as the scientific guidance or advice, is what they call it, from EMA, and we were delighted that it stated that we would not be required or have to conduct a phase 1 or phase 2 trial.
Okay. That
That
saves a lot of time.
saves a lot of time, a lot of money. And then also that the potential basis for a marketing authorization, basically for an approval, could be simply the conduct of, obviously satisfactory results from a phase 3 immunobridging trial that would compare our vaccine to the Bavarian Nordic one. Keep
Hmm.
in mind that our MVA and that of Bavarian Nordic were initially derived from the same parental cell line, so they're very similar. In fact, they have been referred to as similar. We've received exemptions both from the US FDA and the EMA for certain studies we do not have to do, animal toxicology studies, no, because they believe that for all intents and purposes, they're essentially the same. So that has given us an opportunity for an expedited path, could open the door that we could see revenues coming to us as soon as within the next 3 years. We are scheduled, and I confirmed this yesterday, knowing you and I would be speaking today, that our fill finish, so the vialing of the product we've already manufactured that is CGMP, it has been released for quality, ready to go
Okay.
into the
Very good.
to the patients and all that. That will be conducted in October, so almost next month now, but October and November. So we should see by the end of November, if it's soon as it's done, we will be announcing it. Certainly, we will have the fill finish completed, so that's scheduled and it starts. So we've got all that laid out. And then we will be conducting the sites. The sites will be in the EU for the clinical trial and
Okay.
in Africa. We're thinking
Okay.
certainly Ghana. We may include Rwanda, but we want to make sure regarding certain safety parameters there and all. But certainly all of that is set up. We are finalizing the selection of our CRO. We have not selected one as yet, and the reason why is we're refining some elements that each of there's just a couple of them. A handful will give us their final proposals, and that's based on some ongoing discussions, as you might imagine, that we're having with the EMA. And soon as we have that final, they will then probably have 2 weeks to get back to us, and then we will finalize that selection. But that's not a rate limiting step. What would have been was if we hadn't gone forward this time a year ago and started the manufacturing. We completed the manufacturing and the release of the product at the end of 2024. And so we got ahead of it. We continue to be in discussions with the likes of WHO, UNICEF, Gavi, and others. And all they related that to the Africa CDC. All of those are aware of our status. We'll be meeting with them in CEPI. also when we're over in Europe in the upcoming trip. So we're
Okay.
excited. This is very exciting because we see that we will be going out there from a company standpoint. Uh, Crossing that threshold into revenue generation is certainly a big deal for every company. So we're excited about that. And at the same time, it will undoubtedly open up certain partnering discussions because again, we have worldwide rights to be able to manufacture and distribute a Geo MVA wherever it's needed. So we're talking to the International Vaccine Institute, which is headquartered out of South Korea. They specifically, the director general there specifically told me that we need access to more MVA vaccine. We can't get what we need in our region of the world. So we're in all of those discussions, doing everything we can to get more produced and also sooner.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot of well-laid plans there, David.
Yeah, oh, we're trying. We're trying to keep busy. Yes.
Well, I couldn't help but notice the balloons and the happy birthday sign in the background. So happy birthday, David. We won't.
Thank you. It is my birthday today. Already two of my daughters have called early to wish me happy birthday. The other two and their families will be calling yet today. So it's somewhat of a distracting day, but yes, it's a good
Good
day, but it's
distraction.
a good day regardless because we do see, this progress for GeoVax, and we're delighted with where we are. Again, the biggest challenge for a company such as ours is clearly the capital development. We were successful in raising approximately $6 million in early July. We'll continue to raise money yet this year. We'll soon, week after next, we'll be spending the entire week in New York City in different meetings, different banking firms, different investors, and all, basically
Okay. Yep.
preparing everything for the next tranche of capital development. Let me just also underscore that we're not just looking at the equity side of capital development. We're very heavily, as I've indicated in our comments, focused on the non-dilutive route, and that's underway also.